will have to decide exactly how much embarrassment you're willing to take and how much dignity you're willing to give up so billionaires can continue to buy elections, work you for slave wages, and blame your humiliation on the immigrants or the trans person or the DEI hire or the autistic child or her mother. What's up, YouTube? Drill Sergeant here. And this week, the jaundiced owner's disappointment in the White House took a break from protecting pedophiles just long enough to insult every world leader on Earth. Besides Russia, of course. And that's not all. He simultaneously embarrassed the only country on Earth mentally and emotionally disabled enough to vote a crustacean like him into power. Unfortunately, that's this one. I live in this country, YouTube, and yeah, I'm fucking embarrassed. I'm embarrassed by the continuous and exponential retarding mental state of our president. During his address at this week's UN summit, Krusty McCankles started his speech already at a maturity level somewhere around a really spoiled, bratty preteen. And by the end of his full hour of incoherent babbling, he had regressed to a full-on baby in a crib, crying for his binky. It was fucking embarrassing, YouTube. I'm sure everybody remembers the time that Donald Trump addressed the UN and said in 2 years, his administration had achieved more than any administration that had come before, and then the delegates started laughing because they thought it was a joke.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
Well, this time, no one saw the humor. Let's start with the preteen meltdown phase, shall we, of this year's UN.
Many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York, known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product. And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad and so costly. It was going to cost them a fortune. And I said, and wait till you see the overruns. Well, I turned out to be right. They had massive cost overruns and spent between $2 and $4 billion on the building and did not even get the marble floors that I promised them. You walk on terrazzo, do you notice that? As far as I'm concerned, frankly, looking at the building and getting stuck on the escalator, they still haven't finished the job. They still haven't finished. That was years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress actually asked me to testify before them on the tremendous waste of money, because it turned out that they had no idea what it was, but they knew it was anywhere between $2 and $4 billion as opposed to $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, many things in the United Nations are happening just like that, but on an even much bigger scale, much, much bigger.
Now, if you're wondering, what the hell was just being said there? What was he just talking about with the building not being finished and the escalator not working and the whole shtick? President, mind you. This is what he was referring to.
Are you going to push Zelensky for peace, President Trump?
All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have been operating this teleprompter. From the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
Except this, YouTube. Yeah, what you just saw there, YouTube, was a sad, pitiful old man, intellectually and emotionally stunted at the age his father sent him to boarding school. Huh? And when the other kids at that boarding school realized that Donald was intellectually inferior to a golden retriever, they made fun of him. And his father hated him for being an embarrassment. And in that moment, Donald learned that he would never actually be smart enough to do anything for his father to take the time to pretend to love him like a real boy. So instead, Donnie Boy lashed out. He took every failed test as a personal attack. He avoided responsibility at all costs, manufactured fake relationships, and became a bully, like an immature preteen does. He also learned that bragging about his father's buildings while doing this seemed to work in getting Daddy to fake love him more. In return, his father paid for every degree he ever had, and as a result, Golden Retriever Brain is still too stupid to understand the nuances of the world around him, YouTube, and too worthless as a human being to even care, is the problem. So instead, he fucking lied. That's it. He bragged about his lies, manufactured evidence of his lies, so he could throw a full-on preteen temper tantrum about being rejected for a thing 30 years ago. Baby, this is what just happened, YouTube. That's what you just saw. Not only did he do that, he proceeded in his lie and manufacturing of evidence for the lie. He proceeded to shift the responsibility of his mere existence being a tourniquet on the flow of intelligence away from himself onto everyone else in the room. Textbook. I'm embarrassed. Thanks, MAGA. You don't have to take my word for it, YouTube. Just look at how the European press reacted to the speech made by America's very own venereal infection-colored discharge on society.
As you can imagine, it's a cover story for many international newspapers as well. Let's take a look at British, the Daily Mirror here, that calls the speech, quote, deranged. It summarizes the speech that was 56 minutes long. It talked about climate, migrants, Gaza, but also escalators, marble floors, and teleprompters, and may I add, cows. Then we have a French left-wing Libération here with a very opinionated headline that says, quote, Trump is pissing off the world, and the paper calls the speech staggering, violent, and incoherent. Moving then to Spanish daily El País that estimates that Trump's aim is to blow up the rules of the international game, and Germany's Die Zeit agrees with that. The magazine says that Trump's accusations are becoming, quote, crazier every minute.
Before President Cancos had even arrived at the UN, he was already causing issues with the European leaders. What you see here is President Macron and his delegation being stopped trying to enter the French embassy. That was probably like a lighthearted moment considering what was about to happen next. In his speech to the General Assembly, President Trump seemed to denounce all other countries, especially European ones, I can't make this up, for their open borders, YouTube, and also being too politically correct. He accused the UN of facilitating an invasion of Western countries. He said Sharia law was taking over the UK. It isn't, according to all the people we have writing from the UK. He attacked the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and he called climate change the biggest con job ever. Oh, I'm sorry. All of that was after blaming Europe for not being, wait for it, strong enough on Russia.
I've also been working relentlessly, stopping the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But, in war, you never know what's going to happen. Young soldiers, mostly soldiers, on both sides, every single week, from 5,000 to 7,000 dead young people. And some in cities, much smaller numbers, where rockets are shot. where drones are dropped. This war would never have started if I were president. This was a war that should have never happened. It shows you what leadership is, what bad leadership can do to a country. China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly. But for those tariffs to be effective, European nations, all of you are gathered here right now, would have to join us in adopting the exact same measures. I mean, you're much closer to this. We have an ocean in between. You're right there. And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them. And it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that.
Anybody who hears that and who believes anything that this orange, maniacal, tangerine tornado of a president is saying is because they're watching the wrong news. They are watching so much biased news that has infected this country that simple, logical facts like one person invading another and America being the number one facilitator of weapons and money on earth backing out is not the rest of Europeans' fault. This is why we have to use things like ground news. Honestly, ground news has very quickly become one of my most prized resources, my go-to even, because I get to find out what stories are not covered by the blind spot feature, which I love. But not just the blind spot feature. Any of the stories that I bring up, I can see what either side is saying about it. I can also see who's paying for those headlines. It tells me who owns the publication, which also lets me know who they're writing it for. Many times, none of that is for us. But understanding the context helps us understand the story. Ground news is absolutely one of, if not the best way to know that you've gotten every side of a story and that there's not enough spin in the world that could have you misinterpret it. The president of Slovenia indirectly hit back at some of Trump's criticism in her speech. Brave, I would call it. President Natasha Pitz-Mushar.
We did not stop the Holocaust. We did not stop the genocide in Rwanda. We did not stop the genocide in Srebrenica. We must stop the genocide in Gaza. There are no excuses anymore. None. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Madam President, please accept. In 1945, the end of the Second World War was greeted with celebrations, and hopes were placed in a new era of peace and cooperation, embodied by the creation of the United Nations. However, those hopes were soon overshadowed by the onset of the Cold War. When it ended in 1991, we once again dared to believe that this would pave the way to the vision of lasting peace, security and cooperation as enshrined in the UN Charter. Sadly, that vision has not materialized. In fact, the situation has worsened, and here is why. Firstly, the Security Council, envisioned as the very pillar of collective security, is failing to meet the expectations of the world, if it ever has. The Permanent Five were supposed to be role models for the rest of the world working for peace. Some work in their own interests instead. Secondly, the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals is faltering. Progress is lagging, and with cuts in development assistance, millions of the world's poorest are pushed further away from the access to even the most basic services. Thirdly, international law appears to stand at the precipice of irrelevance. The independence of elected international judges, the integrity of human rights institutions, personal security of human rights defenders, and the authority of this organization are under siege. Fourthly, the Genocide Convention risks becoming a relic of the past. Some states have put the International Criminal Court to its greatest challenge ever. Its prosecutors, whose only duty is the pursuit of justice, and its judges, whose responsibility is to uphold the law, our international law, now face sanctions and intimidation. As if the states that sanction them would prefer to shield the alleged perpetrators of atrocities rather than confront the truth and help deliver justice.
Yeah, no lies detected. After the UK and France formally recognize Palestine, the U.S. will be the only country out of the Big Five not to do so. In regards to recognizing a Palestinian state, President Trump said it would be rewarding Hamas. Golden retriever brain. Or is it that the less Palestinian voices Trump hears, the easier it'll be for him to have his Riviera in the Middle East? Which one is it? Which one do you think it is, YouTube? President Erdogan of Turkey also spoke to the General Assembly. His speech was more of a reflection of the collective conscience of humanity. So, the complete antithesis to the words of President Trump. He began by reminding delegates of the signing of the United Nations Charter 80 years ago in San Francisco. He then read the first words of the first article of the UN Charter, people. The purpose of the United Nations is to maintain international peace and security. That's what they are. He was quick to point out that the absence of the Palestinian president when this week countries like the UK, France, and Canada are going to formally recognize Palestinian statehood, and yet the President Abbas was refused a visa to enter the U.S. The focus of his message was that silence is complicity concerning Gaza, that every leader that invokes international peace and security is a hypocrite for standing by while children die every hour in Gaza. He showed photos of starving babies, children without arms or legs, women with empty cups and bowls, people under rubble, and asked a simple question: is there any justification for those images, YouTube? That's what a president does. That's what a president does. The willful destruction of hospitals, or the fact that adults and children are having limbs amputated without anesthetic. Those guilty of inaction were accomplices of barbarity. And I don't know if those were his words or my writers, but that sounds about damn right. Let me continue. He spoke of doctors being disappeared and deliberately killed while in custody. Ambulances have been hit and hospitals deliberately targeted. In many cases, surgery isn't possible. Can we put Gaza back on the news front? Can we keep that in the news cycle? You see, the civilian death toll in Gaza now stands at over 65,000. Over 20,000 of them were, you already know, children. Where's Q when you need him? For the last 23 months, Israel has murdered a child an hour. And now Israel's deliberately killed 250 international and national journalists in Gaza. Over 500 aid workers have been killed, 326 of them UN staff. The folks at the meeting. The UN has been unable to protect its own personnel in Gaza. Agricultural land and water supplies are purposefully being destroyed and polluted. Homes, libraries, hospitals, mosques. The soil in Gaza is being destroyed. The soil. You didn't hear this one? It's useless. You can't even grow anything on it anymore. It's becoming that way. This is just revenge porn. President Erdogan went on to talk about the West Bank and how Israel has also attacked Syria, Yemen, Iran, Lebanon, and most recently, Qatar, and how the increasing aggression of Israel is slowly eroding the values that emerged after World War II by the people who were victims of it. The reason why UN exists. He asked the delegates to show the courage to take action. He pointed out the contrast of the inaction of world governments with their people who all over the world march in solidarity for the people of Gaza. And he wasn't the only one. You see, there happens to be other presidents and world leaders out there that further intensify my embarrassment of this place that I signed my name on the dotted line for and would love to have pride in it again. He wasn't the only one that criticized Israel. You see, notable leaders who didn't bring up dying children in Gaza, one, Trump. That's it. Then again, President Trump's mind is on other things like blaming Tylenol and mothers for autism, To be clear, the European and UK advice is Tylenol and related drugs does not cause autism, and people should take medical advice from doctors, not an orange-cankled president who told people bleach might be a good treatment for COVID. Embarrassment is the kindest description of what we've become. But we can change that, YouTube. I believe that. I still do. I promise you. It'll take time. But you're going to have to make a decision. You will have to decide exactly how much embarrassment you're willing to take and how much dignity you're willing to give up so billionaires can continue to buy elections, work you for slave wages, and blame your humiliation on the immigrants or the trans person or the DEI hire or the autistic child or her mother. Before you choose to fight back and organize a strike, a national strike, a multi-pronged boycott, an indefinite nationwide boycott on strategic industries like public transportation, carpool associations, do it, develop networks, offer van services if you have one, and fund it through donations at participating churches who have also decided that fighting is better than slavery and constant orange-colored humiliation. I'll tell you what, at this same UN conference, people, there's still an example of what it means to make a decision to fight, to sacrifice, and tear and grip and claw and cling with their very lives to remain free in the face of tyranny. And that country also spoke at the UN summit this week. And instead of embarrassment, they proved themselves ready to fill the leadership void left by our absence in the name of bipartisanship and decorum and hashtag resistance means. Here is that speech. And real quick, just check out the description or email us to find out how to join a resistance that requires sacrifice. Yes, it does. But you are going to have to decide how much more of this humiliation that we're willing to take. Because tomorrow, we fight. Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, and with solidarity. We pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind. The kind that moves. But here's the thing. None of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads. It's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works.
Dear leaders, dear friends, and all those who can become our friends, because you want safety and peace just as much as we do. Today, no one but ourselves can guarantee security. Only strong alliances, only strong partners, and only our own weapons. The 21st century isn't much different from the past. If a nation wants peace, it still has to work on weapons. It's sick. But that's the reality. Not international law, not cooperation. Weapons decide who survives. Excellencies, you know perfectly well international law doesn't work fully unless you have powerful friends who are truly willing to stand up for it. And even that doesn't work without weapons. It's terrible, but without it, things would be even worse. There are no security guarantees except friends and weapons. No Ukrainian choice this kind of reality. And knowing our people, they would have chosen a different priority. Ukrainians are peaceful people, but they are people who want to live freely in their own independent country. That's why we invest in defense. For many nations, there is simply no other way left. Stop it. That's how weak these institutions have become. What can Sudan or Somalia or Palestine or any other people living through war really expect from the UN or the global system? For decades, just statements and statements. And even everything happening in Gaza remains without a way out. Even now, Syria, after all the changes, still has to appeal to the world to ease the sanctions that are choking its economy. It has to ask and wait. Syria deserves stronger support from the international community. And as Russia's war against my country goes on, people are still dying every week. Yet there is no ceasefire because Russia refuses. Russia abducted thousands of Ukrainian children, and we have brought some of them back. And I thank everyone who's helped. But how long will it take to bring all of them home? Childhood slips away faster than adults are able to help. Look at Israel. Nearly 2 years have passed and hostages still haven't been freed. They must be freed, but even that still hasn't happened. And for years, there have been no real answers to other threats, either chemical weapons and famine used as a weapon. Last year, at this assembly, I warned the world about the risk of radiation disasters, especially due to Russia's occupations of our Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The facts are simple. Stopping this war now, and with it, the global arms race, is cheaper than building underground kindergartens or massive bunkers for critical infrastructure later. Stopping, I told you before, Ukraine is only the first, and now Russian drones are already flying across Europe, and Russian operations are already spreading across countries, and Putin wants to continue this war by expanding it, and no one can feel safe right now. So first, we are now building a new security architecture for ourselves. More than 30 countries are already part of our coalition, and we are strengthening army, launching joint weapons production with partners, and defining financial commitments for defense in a way that could become a security model for any other nation. If security guarantees work for Ukraine, something more than just friends and weapons, it will mean that people were able to make national security not a privilege for a few nations, but a right for everyone. Second, we are ready to make our modern weapons become your modern security, your modern weapon. And we have decided to open up arms exports. And these are powerful systems tested in a real war when every international institution failed. And we are also ready to grow our defense production together with strong partners so that their protection is modern and reliable. You don't need to start this race from scratch. We are ready to share what has already proven itself in real defense. And third, many in the world still relaxed. Still. But look at how many countries are here at this General Assembly. Countries that are at war, or just came out of war, or are trying to stop one, or openly getting ready for one. War has already reached too many people to pretend it has nothing to do with you. So it depends on you. Whether you help peace or continue trading with Russia and helping Russia to fund this war, it depends on you. Whether prisoners of war will be freed, whether abducted children will come home, whether hostages will be free. It depends on you what will define existence. War like now, or our joint strong actions as it should be. Yesterday, Yesterday we had a good meeting with President Trump, and I also spoke with many other strong leaders, and together we can change a lot. Of course, we are doing everything to make sure Europe truly helps. And of course, we count on the United States. I appreciate the support we are receiving. Yes, much depends on the G7 and G20, but in the end, peace depends on all of us, on the United Nations. So don't stay silent while Russia keeps dragging this war on. Please speak out and condemn it. Please join us in defending life and international law and order. People are waiting for action. Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini.
Follow us on all these things you see here, and our link tree is in the description. Maybe even get some merch.